So in the second video for lesson 2, we're now going to look at how do we add items into an array. So now that we know why they're useful and now that we know how to create them, we're now going to start manipulating them in ways so we can add items in and eventually hopefully remove items out. So if we start here, you're going to notice that adding items to an array, there is a built-in function that will allow us to do that called the append method or the append function. So append parenthesis parenthesis is what we'll be using to help us do that. Now the syntax that we have is it'll be array name, so whatever your array name is, dot append. And what append tells your program to do is it tells it to add an item to the end of that array. So say that your array has 6 items, it'll then add the array to be the 7th item at the end. So it always becomes that last index if you're adding the value on. The other piece is that the item that you want added on should be contained inside of these parentheses. Whether it's a string or a number, it should be in here. If it is a string, it should be contained inside of double quotations. If it's just a number, we'll put just a number. You can even put a variable name in here and it will add whatever the variable value is onto the end of that array. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to comment this part out from the list versus array so you still have it, but we want to instead now start looking at what happens when we add an item to the array. So here, I'm going to show you a couple of different ways we can do this, but we're going to type this code in and then we're going to make some predictions about what is going to happen. And I'm actually going to add a little bit of extra code in here too. So we have definition main, our main function, and we're going to type all of our code in here. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create my array equals, and we're going to set it equal to 2 brackets with nothing inside. What this does is it creates an empty array. And these are typically used when we want to start with something empty and then add values in as the program is used. So the next line that we're going to type is my array.append 6. So what this is going to do is it's going to append. Remember, append means add. And we're going to add 6 onto the end of this array. So it will become the first index in this array. So that's what's going to happen here. Add 6 to array. 6 becomes the first index. Then from here, I'm just going to print my array so that I can clarify this is really what's happening. And if I run my program, that's what I see is I see a single array with 6 added to the inside. Now, if we write this line of code again, underneath it, do my array.append 17. This will add 17 to the array, becomes the next index. So this will be index 1. This here will be index 0. If I run this again, I now see that it's grown. I've added a value into it. Now what you could also do is you could have the user enter in value and you could add that in too. So say you had my age and you had them enter this in. So you did an eval with input and you said, please enter in your age. And then you did my array.append and you put in my age. What this will do is it will add the value of my age onto the end of the array. So it's kind of a cool little trick. And then if I do this again, it says please enter in my age. I enter in 29 and it adds it onto the array. And then if I run it again, but I enter in a different value, you can see that it changes that last index. So append is really nice. Remember, you need to put your value inside of here. So here's the variable value. So I'm taking the value from here and adding it. If you wanted to add a string, so we'll just do a string example really quick. You would do my array 2, because we want our arrays to have different types of values in there. Say I did my array 2 dot append. I could put my name in there or something and then print my array 2 to the screen. So then I did please enter in your age. So I did 29, it prints that, and then it prints the string with Sarah in it. So notice that I have 2 different types of arrays going here. Another thing to note is that this is one of the times when I call a function and I don't need to set it equal to something because this doesn't return a value, it just adds a value on to the end of that array. So note that we don't have to save a value anywhere with this function, we just use it to add on a value to an array. So there's our predictions that we saw come true. So we're now going to try this again, but we're going to actually use a loop to help us do it in a slightly different way. So if you want to comment out this piece, that's fine. If you want to leave it in, that's okay too. Now we're going to experiment a little bit more with for loops and arrays. So here I have square array, and remember these empty brackets, those empty square brackets are creating an empty array. And then from here, we're going to experiment and see what happens when we do this. So we're typing in 4x in range 101. And I'm thinking, because I've used for loops before, that this is a for loop that cycles from 0 to 100 and doesn't quite get to 101. So I can start to picture what this is going to do. Inside of here, I see that they want me to type square equals x times x. So this is going to square or take x to the second power. So that's what's going to happen here is I have x times x or x squared. And then I'm doing square array dot append square. So what this is telling me, based on my computer science knowledge so far, is that square, I'm squaring the numbers and then I'm saving the value in square. I'm then appending square array to have square inside of it. So I'm going to add on whatever the value is for square onto the very, very end. So that's what I'm predicting is going to happen. It's going to add the value for square onto the end of the array. The array called square array. Perfect. Okay. So that's my prediction of what's going to happen so far with that piece of code. Now, if I run this, what you're going to notice is nothing appears. I can't check it. If I wanted to check what was going on, I could add a print statement in there. So I'm noticing here I can't check if my predictions are correct, but I notice a second chunk of code down here that asks me to add in 4y in square array. And I remember from my array knowledge that when I write it in this way, it's going to cycle through every single value or every single item that is inside of square array. And then it has print y, and this is going to print each item in the array. So this will be how I check whether or not my prediction up here was correct. Now I notice that this is accidentally indented in, so I want to indent it back. I don't want it contained inside of this other for loop. Now if I run it, what I notice, and if I go back up to the top, my predictions are coming true. This is 0 squared, 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared, 4 squared, 5 squared, 6 squared. So essentially my array, and if I'm really not sure, I can just do print square array at the very end as well. I can check and make sure that this is really what's been added to my array. So I had a blank array to start, but now I have an array filled with all of the numbers that are squared between 0 and 100. So I very, very quickly was able to save multiple values in an array. I didn't have to have 100 different variables, but I now have all of these values saved, all of these square values, and I could then access them at a later date. So using this append is really powerful. It allows you to take variable values or values entered in by users and actually add them on to the end of an array and to create an array filled with values entered in by the user.